The Remington Report. Sponsored by Heritage Place, the place where champions are sold. Also sponsored by the Oklahoma Quarter Horse Racing Association, promoting quarter horse, app, and paint racing in Oklahoma. And I'm your host, Greg Thompson of StallionResearch.com.
You bet I'll be watching.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Greg Thompson of StallionResearch.com for the Remington Report. This is episode 8 of 15. We're moving right along this meet. We're going to preview the Remington Park Futurity and Derby this coming weekend on the Remington Report this week. But let's take a look back at last week's trials. The PSBA Paint Futurity and Derby trials were run. Let's take a look at some of the top qualifiers.
The race recap brought to you by StallionResearch.com.
There wasn't any stakes action last weekend at Remington Park during the Easter weekend. But what they did have was the Grade 1 PSBA American Paint Classic Futurity Trials on Saturday for the 2-year-old paints. You might recognize the name of this filly, Personal Ensign. If you do, you're remembering the Hall of Fame thoroughbred filly who finished her career undefeated by the same name. This version made a great comparison as the Country Quick Dash filly got up in the final stride to post the fastest qualifying time of 17.661 seconds for the 350-yard trial. Personal Ensign is co-owned and bred by J Bar 7 Ranch LLC, as well as co-owned and trained by Eddie D. Willis. Jockey David Pinion was in the saddle. Let's move on to the 3-year-old paints, who contested the set of trials for the Grade 1 PSBA American Paint Classic Derby going 400 yards. Luis Villafranco trained Flash the Chicks looked ultra impressive in his trial heat under G.R. Carter Jr. The Royal Quick Flash gelding stopped the clock for the 400 yards in a time of 19.652 seconds. Flash the Chicks was bred in Oklahoma and is owned by its breeder, Shirley Wheeler. And that'll do it for the Remington race recap this week.
An official representative for horsemen in the state, the OQHRA administers race, benevolence, and scholarship programs, all to better the state of racing in the state of Oklahoma. Visit OQHRA.com.
Okay, it's time to analyze the Remington Park Futurity, and I want to look at the race and analyze it from a handicapper standpoint. Let's talk about trip handicapping, because several of these horses did not have the most optimum trip, especially early on in the race, and it did have an outcome on the times that were posted in the order of the qualifiers.
Last week on the Remington Report, we highlighted the fastest qualifier, A Will and Away. He is seen here having only a slight bobble at the break, but powers up along the rail not only to win his trial heat, but to post the fastest time of all 2-year-old qualifiers in a time of 16.568 seconds in day 1 of the trials. Moving on to the second and third fastest qualifiers, Lotta PYC and Rambling Cartel. They came out of the same trial race. Watch as we zoom in on the break from the gates. Lotta PYC takes a stutter step as he moves away from the gates, but starts rolling as Rambling Cartel along the outside under jockey Modesta Pena actually is in front of Lotta PYC as he starts to lug in. And as you can see, he continues to lug in while Lotta PYC begins to find his top gear and motors to a 3/4 of a length victory. So to recap the top 3 qualifiers, A Will and Away at the top in the number 1 spot, the Rodney Reed trained Lotta PYC in second, and Rambling Cartel, even with his lugging in, gets up to qualify third with a time of 16.588 seconds for trainer Wendy Garcia. The 4th fastest qualifier, Sooner Regards, broke tardy from the gates in his trial and was a clear 1 1/2 length behind the front runners in the early stages of the race. As the race progressed, the Brent Clay trainee under jockey Stormy Smith hits his stride as he powers past the front runners to win his trial in a time of 16.745 seconds. Now 2 horses that Sooner Regard passes in the trial race also make it to the finals. Another Verl Bonner trainee, Big Boy, seen here in the 4-path under jockey David Brown, and PYC Ticket with Berkeley Packer aboard. All 3 horses hit the wire in formation and now have a chance at running at the Big Check on Saturday. Take one step back and look at the brief trouble at the break for Cartel Destiny in his trial as he brushes with another horse before going on to win under jockey Jimmy Brooks for Eddie D. Willis. The FDD gelding is owned by James Seals and Abel Flores and qualifies 5th. So let's recap the middle 4 qualifiers for the $850,000 Remington Park, Oklahoma bred futurity. Trainer Eddie D. Willis puts his second qualifier into the field with Ground Hero, seen here winning his trial under jockey Jimmy Brooks. The 9th and 10th fastest qualifiers, First Flynn Dash and Cartel Regards, come out of the same race. They finished 2nd and 3rd respectively behind the fastest qualifier, A Will and Away. And that's a look at the top qualifiers for the Remington Park, Oklahoma bred futurity. The Remington Report is sponsored by Heritage Place. Heritage Place in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Upcoming yearling sale in September 20th through the 23rd. Heritage Place, the place where champions are sold.
Okay, we're back on the Remington Report, and it's time to analyze the Remington Derby. And I'm sure after you see this preview here on the Remington Report, you will feel the same as that I do, that you will not be surprised if any of these horses comes home a winner on Saturday in the Remington Park Derby. Let's give it a look.
Now that we've looked at the futurity, let's now look at the Remington Park, Oklahoma bred Derby. And as you can see, the field's credentials are as stellar as you possibly can ask for. One race produces 3 of the top 4 qualifiers, with the victor of this race, BV Valentine Wagon, out of the Eddie Lee Willis barn, winding up the fastest qualifier going into the finals on Saturday. The winner is by PYC Paint Your Wagon and is owned by Bella Vista Farms. Next spotlighted trial race goes on to the Oklahoma Derby winner Cruisin' the Wagon for trainer Brent Clay and jockey Stormy Smith. As you can see, the PYC Paint Your Wagon filly made easy work of her rivals in her trial and sits as the 3rd fastest qualifier for owners Terry and Mary Purcell. Also on tap for the big race day on Saturday is the Ladybug's Moon Stakes and the Lykoberg Stakes, and the Remington Park Juvenile Stakes as the Grade 2 Bob Moore Memorial.
Okay, and now for my selections in the Remington Park Derby and futurity, I'm going to go with Sooners Regard in the futurity. If this horse can break a lot better than he did in the trial, this horse is going to be a major factor at the wire. In the Derby, I'm going to go with 2 horses. I also like the Brent Clay train, Cruisin' the Wagon. Of course, he won the Oklahoma Derby earlier in the meet. I look for him to be a major factor here. He cruised home in his trial, almost under a hand ride. And of course, I also like the Grade 1 winning Send Me a Candy Tree out of Clinton Crawford barn. Hope he's going to be a factor as well. Good luck to all the connections going into these 2 big races this weekend.
The Breeding Shed Moment, brought to you by StallionEsearch.com.
The spotlighted stallion this week on the Breeding Shed Moment is Country Quick Dash, who is by Royal Quick Dash out of a Zevi mare named Country Zevi. Country Quick Dash had a top week last week as 2 of his offspring qualified for the PSBA American Classic Paint Futurity, including the fastest qualifier, Personal Ensign. He is also the sire of 3 qualifiers into the PSBA American Paint Classic Derby. Therefore, Country Quick Dash earns the spotlight this week in the StallionEsearch.com Breeding Shed Moment. If you go to StallionEsearch.com, you can view all the member stallion pages by clicking on the drop-down menu at the top right of the page.
Hey, that'll do it for us here on the Remington Report. I'm Greg Thompson of StallionEsearch.com. And remember, if you can't be at the racetrack, go to aqha.com/racing and watch all the Q Racing videos to your heart's content. We'll see you next week, and we'll recap the Remington Park Futurity and Derby. Have a good time at the racetrack.